In the remote expanses of the Gobi Desert in western China, a small nuclear reactor is currently doing something no machine on Earth had successfully demonstrated in over 50 years. It is quietly converting an abundant, silvery white element called thorium into usable nuclear fuel while operating at high temperatures, all without the need for a pressurized water system. Thorium was once the other nuclear fuel, the fuel that almost powered our world before political and technical hurdles relegated it to the shadows of history. This technology traces its lineage back to a laboratory in Tennessee in the 1960s, where visionary engineers first proved it could work. They built it, they ran it, and then they were told to abandon it. For decades, the promise of thorium survived only because a dedicated handful of engineers and citizen advocates refused to let the dream of a safer, more abundant nuclear future die. Today, the dream is rising again. This is the story of thorium, the fuel that almost was, and the technology that might yet be. To understand why thorium is so revolutionary, we must first understand its unique physics. Thorium-232, the isotope found in nature, is fertile, not fissile. This means it cannot sustain a chain reaction on its own. It needs to absorb a neutron to become thorium-233, which quickly begins its transformation through radioactive decay. Within minutes, Th-233 decays into protactinium-233. This is the critical middle step of the thorium fuel cycle. This isotope must then decay further. Protactinium-233 has a half-life of roughly 27 days. After this wait, it finally decays into uranium-233, the desired fissile isotope that can power the reactor. This process is called breeding. In a well-designed thorium reactor, we can produce as much new fuel as we consume, or even more, making the fuel supply virtually inexhaustible. However, the environment inside a running nuclear reactor is a violent sea of neutrons. And here is where the physics of thorium meets its greatest engineering challenge. Protactinium-233 has a very high neutron capture cross-section. This means it is highly likely to absorb another neutron while it is waiting to decay into uranium-233. When it absorbs that extra neutron, it becomes protactinium-234, which does not become fuel. This poisoning of the process kills the breeding efficiency and wastes potential energy. To solve this, engineers must remove the protactinium-233 from the active reactor core. It must be isolated in a side stream, away from the intense neutron flux. Once isolated, the protactinium can safely decay into uranium-233 over its 27-day period. Then, the pure uranium-233 can be chemically separated and returned to the fuel salt. This requires sophisticated online chemical processing, a chemical plant, attached directly to the reactor loop. This is far more complex than the simple fuel rods used today. This step also raises serious non-proliferation questions. Separating protactinium leads to the creation of essentially pure uranium-233, a material that could theoretically be used in weapons. While the presence of uranium-232 and its dangerous gamma rays makes it incredibly difficult for outsiders to handle, the plant operators themselves would have a technical pathway to fissile material. Managing these physics, engineering, and security challenges simultaneously is why the thorium cycle, despite its elegance, has remained a fuel that almost was for over half a century. To understand how we arrived at this technical crossroads, we have to go back to the dawn of the nuclear age and a project that changed the world. During the Manhattan Project, the potential of thorium was already recognized by some of the greatest minds in physics, men like Eugene Wigner and Alvin Weinberg. In May 1945, they proposed a circulating liquid fuel reactor using the thorium cycle. Weinberg would spend the rest of his career fighting to make that vision a reality. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, the U.S. Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Program. The goal was a bomber that could fly for days without refueling. This program required a reactor that was small, high temperature, and lightweight. The solution was a molten salt design, the first of its kind ever to operate. In 1954, the ARE ran successfully at record-breaking temperatures. But when intercontinental missiles made nuclear planes obsolete, the project's funding was slated for termination. Weinberg, however, saw the civilian potential. He pivoted the technology toward large-scale power generation, setting the stage for the most famous experiment in thorium history. The molten salt reactor experiment, or MSRE, would become the holy grail for thorium advocates, a proof of concept that still drives the industry today. Unlike conventional reactors, the MSRE's fuel was dissolved directly into a molten fluoride salt. This allowed for stable operation at atmospheric pressure and extreme temperatures. It ran for thousands of hours, demonstrating that the materials and the chemistry could handle the intense radiation and heat. It proved the kernel of the concept was sound. But there was a catch. The MSRE was a test of the reactor, not the full breeding cycle. It never implemented the continuous protactinium removal needed for a true breeder. Uranium was recovered in batches, but the real-time chemical dance of extracting and returning fuel was never fully proven under sustained reactor conditions. While Oak Ridge worked on molten salts, another experiment was taking place in a more conventional setting. Shippingport would become the first commercial-scale breeder. From 1977 to 1982, it used a specialized thorium-uranium core in a light water reactor. It was a bold attempt to prove breeding could work in existing reactor types. After 5 years of operation, the results were definitive. The core contained more fissile material than it started with. Breeding in a thorium cycle was a proven fact. But despite these successes, the political winds were shifting. The liquid metal fast breeder reactor, using plutonium, had become the preferred path for the federal government. In the early 1970s, the decision was made. Funding for thorium and molten salt research was slashed, and the experts at Oak Ridge were told to wind down their work. There were real technical concerns as well. Tellurium in the salt was causing embrittlement in the reactor's metal alloy, and the behavior of graphite under long-term radiation was uncertain. Most fundamentally, the challenge of continuous chemical processing, the key to the entire thorium promise, remained an unscaled mountain. The engineering was simply too ahead of its time. With the ouster of Alvin Weinberg in 1972, the thorium program lost its most powerful champion. The technology was effectively shelved, destined to become a forgotten footnote. But the idea didn't stay buried. In the mid-2000s, a new generation of engineers and advocates began digging through the digital archives of Oak Ridge. Kirk Sorensen, a NASA engineer, rediscovered the forgotten reports and launched a movement. He became the voice of a technology that everyone else had forgotten. His blog became a hub for technical minds worldwide. They weren't just fans, they were experts rebuilding a scientific foundation from the scraps of the past. Filmmakers like Gordon McDowell and authors like Robert Hargraves took the technical details and made them accessible to a global online audience. The thorium viral movement was born. The Thorium Energy Alliance, led by John Kutch, began lobbying Congress and organizing conferences. What started as an online blog had become a legitimate industry movement. But while the West debated, China acted. They launched a massive, state-funded program to turn the Oak Ridge dreams into a physical reality in the sands of the Gobi. By 2023, their experimental reactor had achieved criticality. They were the first in the 21st century to see the thorium chain in action inside an operating molten salt reactor. Today, the physics of thorium is no longer just theory. It is running. It is producing heat, and it is forcing the world to reconsider the fuel that almost was. But the hurdles remain. Solving the protactinium management challenge at commercial scale is the next great frontier. It will require the same persistence that saved the idea from oblivion. The journey of thorium is far from over. From a laboratory in Tennessee to the deserts of China, the promise of a safer nuclear future is finally within reach. Join us in the next segment as we dive deeper into the history of the MSRE and the lost decade of nuclear innovation. This is Thorium Rising.